Hello everyone and welcome back to Bitwig Studio and Music Production. This is lesson 3.45, and in this lesson we're going to take a quick look at the different amplitude effects that come with Bitwig Studio. I'm actually not going to show them to you in this video. We're going to go through and cover them in order like we've done with our other effects devices, but I just wanted to talk about them briefly and why we're putting these off until the end. First off, we've already talked about the tool quite a bit. We've also already talked about the peak limiter quite a bit. So those are both going to be a bit of review when we get to those. And obviously the tool is going to kick things off in our next video. But the reason why I've put these amplitude effects off until the end isn't because they're the most complex or because they're the most mystical or the most underused or the most overused. I put them at the end because of their creative potential. These effects in and of themselves are not always that exciting because what they're doing for the most part is either reducing dynamic range or changing volume over time or shaping an envelope. So with these effects, you really have to use them in conjunction with other effects. So changes in dynamics, changes in volume, are the easiest things for us to really kind of hear. If there's a kid listening to music on his laptop and I'm across the room and he doesn't know it, but I have a remote control and I turn down the volume by 40%, he's going to know it, and he's going to know that the volume's turned down and be looking around like, what the hell just happened? Similarly, if I'm in the most high-end mastering studio in the world and there's the greatest master of all time on the console and I have a remote and I turn things down 40%, he's going to know that it's been turned down by a pretty good margin. Now compare that to maybe adding in the subtlest bit of some tape saturation, or imagine we had our Bitwig distortion device and we're putting in 3% of distortion or 5% of distortion. If I have my remote control and I'm putting the distortion in, that kid listening on his laptop speakers is going to have no idea that I've done that. But the guy who's mastering is going to really know. He's going to be able to pick up on that because of not only his playback system, but also his experience. And, that's what he does for a living. He listens for details. Now, why is that important and how is that relevant to why we're choosing to cover amplitude last? One of the main reasons is because it's very easy to take these amplitude effects and go crazy with them. And a lot of working with audio, especially digital audio, and putting a lot of effects back to back to back to back in a serial configuration is learning how to be subtle and learning the nuance of putting one thing and then how is that going to impact the next effect, right? So there's that big question about serial configuration, and if I put my delay before my reverb or my delay after my reverb, how is that going to change the overall characteristic of the sound? And that's been something I've wanted you guys to be focusing on since we've started piggybacking effects, which we've been doing now for quite a long time. It's very easy to take an amplitude effect and go absolutely crazy with it and do something that, is very creative and there's nothing wrong with doing. But when we get down the line into productions, you probably don't want some of those things. Also, you can do and go the opposite way. You can over compress something and take all of the dynamics out of it. And in some cases, you might be going for that and there's nothing wrong with it. But in other cases, you're just doing it because it's making the sound louder. And so you're not really being as subjective a host or subjective a producer or creator or artist as you need to be. The other reason these amplitude effects are coming now as compared to at the beginning is because I find them to be most fun in conjunction with other effects. And now that we've already worked with the time and duration effects and the frequency effects, you're going to have a better idea of, oh, you know what? It'd be really cool to put the tremolo just subtly right after the distortion, which is, being followed by a reverb, all those sorts of things. It just is easier because these these amplitude effects are not super complicated to use. And once you get a little bit of a handle on them, you're going to just instantly start going to, oh, this would be maybe a good time to add in a little bit of amplitude variation, or maybe a little bit of auto pan, or, maybe we could do something with the side chain on the gate. it's great to already understand the other effects before jumping in and messing around with these amplitude effects, especially because putting a compressor at the beginning of a serial chain as compared to at the end of a serial chain is going to make a really, really big difference. So let's jump in. Let's get started. We're going to kick it off with the tool effect and go from there. So thank you so much for watching, and you'll hear from me again in the next lesson. Take care.